Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries. I'm so excited about this video today because we're doing a Rate My Team. And just before we get into this video, as with every video on our channel at the moment, until we go into the tournament on Friday, there's a chance to win tickets. So all you have to do is like and share the video, comment below, get involved with the comments, but most importantly, subscribe to the channel. The second step is follow our link onto FanTeam and sign up, so to register your team there. And then the third and final step is to send us your FanTeam ID, because otherwise, how are we going to credit your account? So get involved with us today as we get involved with you, helping you rate your teams. Now, this is kind of your rate your team virginity, isn't it, Ben? You've never done one of these before.
You're popping me cherry, Jason. I've heard a lot about them, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm lubed up and I'm ready. I'm ready to accept anything that comes my way.
Whatever the community has for you, they're sliding in to the DMs all through this week. Well, we've gone through what we would say are our favourites, aren't they, Ben? We've selected a few teams here, and we'll start off with Steve Street. He said current draft keepers are placeholders at the moment. Now, the first thing that kind of jumps out at me is who his first keeper is at the moment, and I hope he's not going to stay with it, because you and I have talked at length this week about our hesitancy over the Dutch team. So I think Stekelenburg is not settled. We said that Tim Krul is probably going to be the goalkeeper, but we weren't happy with De Vrij, De Lee, or any of those defenders from the Netherlands, purely because there's been murmurings around the camp. I think that the back four, back three, or back five, whatever De Boer throws at the team at the moment, is just a little bit unsettled. And so I feel if you're going to go with a 4.5 goalkeeper, maybe the Turkish one might be a little bit better, just because the data kind of shows that they have been a little bit more sturdy at the back. There is more unity in the team as well. And I just feel like the Netherlands at the moment, I mean, do you agree with that, Ben? Would you actually go Celik over Stekelenburg?
Celik, I've got, Kagir. Is that?
That's it, Kagir. That's it.
Yeah.
I've made the mistake there. Would you go with Kagir rather than Stekelenburg?
Yeah, 100%. Kagir is in all my draft teams as it currently stands. I really honestly think that FanTeam have dropped a rick pricing up this Turkish team for this tournament, because I look through and I honestly believe that they've got a very, very strong chance of causing one or two upsets and certainly getting out that group. So at 4.5 for a team that I'm expecting to do fairly well. The Dutch, you know, we've talked about it. Those are up there with maybe the Germanys and teams that could potentially flop. You know, they've got some great individual talent within that team, but I'm just not convinced. And particularly with that back line anyway, if I was going to go anywhere near the Dutch, it would be a lot higher up the pitch.
Yeah, and that is what Steve has actually done a little bit further, but we'll focus on the defence at the moment. I've got no criticisms of Alaba. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And I think, you know, talking about the way that FanTeam has set things up, they've done us a solid making him a defender, unlike in Euro Fantasy. And his pricing at 5 million, I mean, absolutely delicious. So I think that's so good there. Now, Bonucci, I think, is a solid pick. He's more of the safer option. I've kind of gone with Spinazzola in terms of the Italian defenders, just because I like that he has that attacking ability, but he's no way kind of nailed at the moment. And, you know, one of our friends, Gianni Batiste, he's kind of said on Twitter that Emerson could come in for Spinazzola in certain games. Maybe his time will be managed, but if he goes above the 60 minutes, he'll get those clean sheets. In that time, he could have an attacking kind of assist or even a goal to his name. So I'm happy there, but I like the Bonucci pick as well. The only problem that I have at the back is Thomas Vermaelen. Now, in terms of it, Vermaelen he's nicely kind of priced for if he was playing 100% for that Belgium back line. But as we know, the kind of Belgium team, it's going to be Alderweireld, it's going to be Denier, and it's probably going to be Vertonghen as well. So I don't think Vermeulen, in his form and his age, is unlikely to actually play. Denier and Alderweireld, I think they're quite expensive. So if you wanted to bump it up by just 0.5 more, you could go with Jan Vertonghen and just have the clean sheets. But then my pick for Belgium is actually Meunier. Again, somebody a bit like Spinazzola, who is not 100% nailed, but has so much attacking ability. But yeah, what did you think on the backline there? Fan of it, or do you think that any changes are needed?
I mean, we've talked about Spinazzola, and the good thing that we've got for the opening game with FanTeam is because typically, the deadline will be 90 minutes before kickoff. But for the first game on Friday, you can, chop and change all the way up until, just before the whistle kicks off. So you can get a good idea of how the Italian side will line up, and hopefully that Spinazzola will continue through the group stages. But, when you've got two players who are fairly evenly matched and it's a close call, like I say, there's nothing for Roberto Mancini to sort of flip-flop between the two of them, particularly if Italy maybe get a couple of good results in that third game. You could see maybe Emerson come in. So you just don't know. Bonucci, look, the Italians are going to garner a lot of interest in that backline. Done really well in the build-up to this. Impressed in some of those non-competitive games. What I would always say is, let's not get too fooled and too hooked on these non-competitive friendly games. Sides are still chopping and changing. Starting 11s aren't necessarily nailed out, and players aren't, going all out, cut and thrust and playing to their full capabilities. They will be holding a little bit back. Point in case would be maybe the Dutch against Scotland, for example. I wouldn't read too much into that result because I'm not expecting a great deal from those Scottish lads. But yeah, I'm with you with Belgium and Vermeulen. Alaba, everybody looks out of, in the fantasy community, loves an out of position player. So predominantly he's going to be playing a lot higher up the pitch. And Austria didn't look too bad against England. Certainly they look capable of causing a surprise. And Alaba, if he can bring anything to the party that he does regularly domestically, then at 5 million, he could be a snip. But for me, I'm just looking at that backline. I think there's a lot of 4.5 defenders available that I would maybe like to punt on. Like we've mentioned in other podcasts, the FanTeam scoring matrix favors those players higher up the pitch. Those players are, those offensive players. And I tell you one player that does, one defender that would benefit is Rodriguez from Switzerland. And that's, again, following on just the introduction of a new sort of point scoring is shots. And I think you produced the data. He averages around about sort of 2.75 to 2.8 shots per 90. And as a defender, he would get 0.6 points per game. So in effect, if he stays within his sort of scoring matrix, you talk about maybe, picking up somewhere between maybe 3 to 5 points even before you start. And what I would also say as well, and this will carry on for everybody's thing, is, players are rewarded for playing 90 minutes in the FanTeam game. With Vermeulen, yes, he's a defender, but, he's not a player that sort of, in terms of being able to, the robustness, he's getting on to the twilight years. He's got that, he's had pretty horrendous injury problems throughout his career. He doesn't scream of somebody who is capable of, completing 90 minutes back to back in these sort of time crunch environments. So again, maybe he's looked to focus on these players who are going to play the full match, because you're going to get, rewarded for that. And if your team can win and you can play 90 minutes, you're easily getting 10 plus points before you even start.
Yeah, I think this is the risk with Vermaelen. I don't mind a Belgian defender. It's just the fact that he probably won't be starting. He's more of just, even Belgium are thinking he's somebody that will be on their bench. Let's move it to the midfield though. And I like a lot about this midfield. It's one of the reasons why I picked this one. Insigne, I think he's got great abilities to do well in Group A. Depay, Olmo and Souček. I think we've spoken positively about all of these. Insigne has pretty damn good data to his name. His non-penalty XG per 90 is in the 83rd percentile for Napoli. Then when you look at Depay, we've spoken so well about him. I think we've talked negatively about the defence of Netherlands, but it seems like their attack is not too affected. They seem to still want to score lots and are able to do that. Him and Wijnaldum are just top picks. Olmo is somebody that I said that I prefer Ferran Torres if I was going for the two, but I still think that Olmo is a good pick. You just have to kind of waylay any sort of feelings that he'll get anything more than assist. He's not very much a goal scorer. He's much more on the kind of end of helping other players, and that works well if you've got a goal scorer like Ferran Torres. And then Souček, I think he's a great differential for his price point. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for him against Scotland and Croatia. Croatia actually concede quite a few goals from set pieces and dead ball situations. He's going to be one of the top picks in that group. So at 5 mil, I think he's worth the punt. I mean, what do you think on that midfield there, Ben?
Souček is somebody that we've talked about a lot, probably flagged as one of the bargains of the game. And we talked about, players playing out of position. He adopted a slightly deeper role since the arrival of Jess Lingard at West Ham. But if you look at his heat map for the Czech Republic, there's a big red orange dot in that opposition penalty box, and he's a huge threat. So at 5 million, and I think that group's pretty tight. I think the Czech could do okay. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. So Souček at 5 million is superb. Talked about Inzaghi again. The Italian loves to have a shot, by the way, as well. So again, that lends itself, and that's likewise Memphis Depay. I think it's only Cristiano Ronaldo of the top 5 European leagues that's had more shots than Depay. So loves a pop-it goal, and it's all of these little sort of players just chipping away and accruing points, and you're on a really steady upward curve just before, without even having to do anything at all.
So moving the attention to the forward line, and he's included one that we've had a bit of discussion about. We're not too sure if we should have him in or not. Robert Lewandowski, he's been so brilliant this season, but I think we're spoiled for choice almost with the forward line of the team, because you've got Lukaku, you've got Ronaldo and Lewandowski in this team, but there's people like Mbappe, there's Harry Kane, there's so many kind of players that Ciro Immobile as well. We're talking positively about Italy there, but he also is somebody that is in consideration in a lot of teams. And I think this has been one of the hard choices of not how many forwards. I think it's which forwards are you going to have as your 3. I think a lot of people are just going with this huge front line. I think there will be a lot of goals, especially because of VAR, but I think as well, and I'm sure you'll open out on this a bit more, but because of the season that we've had, there'll be a lot of tired players mentally and physically coming into this tournament. I can see there being a few errors. So I love the front line. Just for each individual, it's who they like the most. And I love Lukaku. I like Ronaldo. At the moment, I don't have Lewandowski in my team, but he's very close to being in that side. So yeah, what would you say on that front 3, Ben?
Look, Lukaku, Lewandowski, they're 2 players who, like I say, are in the majority of my draft teams at the minute, and I'd be very reluctant to get rid of either. Ronaldo, look, he's going to attract a lot of interest. His ownership will be absolutely through the roof. For me, it's a difficult group, and for that just tempers my enthusiasm a little bit. If we look at our Group F, podcast when we discussed Portugal. I prefer to go with Bernardo in midfield and save myself 2 million. And like I say, you're taking a bit of a chance, not maybe getting the likes of Harry Kane in your team, given that how England should dominate that group. And these opening games is when you make hay. These are when the big results will happen, because inherently when you get to that knockout stage, things are going to be a lot more competitive. Defenses are going to be a lot more tight. There's not as many goals. So it could be, you want to steal a march in these opening games. And for me, there's just a question mark over Ronaldo. Controversial. A lot of people will disagree with that, because even though it is a tight group, if Portugal are going to do anything, then you suspect that it's going to be, Ronaldo that's carrying the flag for Portugal. But you know what? I'm going to spar Wade. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'll not be going with Ronaldo. Just his ownership, and I'm just not convinced. I think Harry Kane is a better option, and when we look at this bench, we could see a way of maybe getting Harry Kane into this team.
Yeah, let's move it on to the bench then, because I'm a lot more warmer than you on Ronaldo. I think this is one that we've almost agreed to disagree on. But also tactically, I will have Ronaldo for that first game, but then I'll move him out. In terms of it then, Harakadi as the 4.0 goalkeeper, I'm guessing that this is because he won't be played, and that's fair enough. I get that you're putting as much money as you can into the rest of your team. Serge Gnabry as a 9.0 on the bench. Very interesting to me that you'd have such an expensive player on there when you could invest in other areas of the pitch. Bednarak, I think, is a great option as somebody to come in and out of your side. And Millet, as we found out from you, Ben, that's how you pronounce it properly. I love him as a 4.5. I think he's a fantastic defensive option to get in some of the games and potentially get some attacking results from a fairly sturdy Denmark as well. So yeah, I think the big problem is that Serge Gnabry choice, and kind of facilitating maybe some. You could improve Olmo to maybe Ferran Torres. You could have Ronaldo as then Harry Kane, and you could maybe put up Vermaelen up to another better defender, and then you can have a good goalkeeper as well. You could spread those funds, and then you could have a cheaper midfielder who will probably play, but you don't mind is stuck on your bench. Maybe somebody that you can rotate with. Souček might be the best option for you. What do you think on that tactic, Ben?
I just want to go back to your point on Ronaldo before I touch on the subs. The only concern that I have is, you're bringing a £10 million striker in. He's going to start the first, and then you maybe will look to rotate him out in the second and third games. With FanTeam, we only have one free transfer. If you want to do more than that, you're taking a -4 hit. And we've seen in the last couple of days, what I'm stressing is, let's look to get 15 starters in your squad first and foremost. The Spain squad have lost Sergio Busquets late on Sunday evening to COVID. The Swedish team are having 2 players self-isolate away from the main group today. That is Dejan Kuzelewski and Matthias Svanberg. Now, again, so, in this COVID environment, there are no guarantees. And what I would, the point I'm trying to make is, if we have 15 starters who you think will go for all 3 games and you're happy to, then, should we have something that crops up at the last minute, we're not having to take any hits to try and move players around. And I think it's easier in other formats, but in FanTeam, to have such a premium asset for maybe just one possible game and look to ship them out, that's a waste of a transfer, particularly when teams could heavily rotate as well in the third game. But that's just me. Goalkeeper, I know he's just a placeholder, but if you want a £4 million keeper who's going to start, Dubravka, hands down. I think that's, not many clean sheets, but he should get save points. I think Millet on the bench is a stronger option anyway than Vermaelen. So he was good. We like him. Bednarek's fine. And Gnabry is, he is the concern. I wouldn't really be having too much money tied up on that bench. Certainly not 9 million, and certainly not when there are a lot of other options out there. By all means, keep some money in the bank, and then maybe after that first game, look to bring somebody like Gnabry in. But yeah, for me, like I would prefer to sort of strengthen that starting 11, and keep to sort of keep as least amount of money on the bench as possible.
Yeah, have starters on your bench, but not people that are going to be soaking up a huge chunk of your very valuable money. And the funny thing is, obviously, we're talking about our teams that we haven't revealed yet, Ben, but I like your advice. I actually agree with it, and maybe I will change my team. The funny thing is whenever we go into these discussions, we almost go in not unprepared. We make our own notes, but we don't compare notes. So I don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what I'm going to say. And this is the wonderful thing, is almost you're watching a live kind of dissection of each other's discussion points as well. It's really good fun, and it's useful. And obviously it's useful for everybody listening, but I think it's useful for each other as well. Now, before we get into the next team, Eddie Fedor has asked, hi guys, if I were to go for a chip strategy with his team, what would you advise? Thanks. Now, I think the problem with asking about chip strategies is what you're going to do. So we're obviously quickly talking about the Euro fantasy. With any of these chip strategies, like you're talking about there with my Ronaldo situation, I don't think that it's wise to kind of say, I'm definitely going to do this in this game week, because things can change. You might have to play Limitless one game week in the Euro Fantasy, or you might have to play your wildcard because you've got 5 injuries in the first game week, because stuff like that just happens, and it's a terrible situation. So what I would say is that probably tactically there's an argument either for game week 2 or game week 3 of your Limitless, and then wildcarding on the quarterfinals. But by no means is that saying that has to be set in stone, because again, injuries, or somebody could go out of form, somebody could be dropped, and the manager kind of gives an indication that they won't be back in. So that is kind of my word advice there on that one. Let's move it on to the next question then. FPL Ole, we're not looking at his team, but he did have a question about Dan James. 50% chance of him starting and he'll sleep happily, but there's a 33% chance at the moment. Ben, you're the injury man. Can you allow FPL Ole to get some more sleep-filled nights?
Well, actually, you read it as Dan James and I read it as Reece James.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, there's a little bit of a question mark regarding who it is. If it's Dan James, look, it's a tough call, this one. We've seen various attacking setup in these sort of pre-tournament games. I would like to say yes, because I think he offers a real attacking threat. I've been quite impressed with him, when he's playing sporadically for United. Obviously, he's got that quick turn of pace as well. That always helps. You're going to need that to unlock some of these defenses. So, look, if it was Dan James, I would slightly increase that. I mean, I'm presuming it's Reece James because a 33% chance is obviously with the 3 right backs remaining at the time of the question. Obviously, when we see Trent bow out, but Reece James, no, I would put it less than 33% chance. I don't think he doesn't start for me. I've got a sneaky suspicion that maybe I don't even know if it's Walker and Trippier. Those are the 2. It depends on how he wants to start. But no, I'm thinking Reece James is probably 3rd in that pecking order, and therefore puts him at less of a 33% chance. So maybe instead of sleeping well tonight, you're going to have nightmares.
Oh, goodness me. And I had a bit of a nightmare there. I saw Bale in his team, but when he asked about James, I assumed that the Welsh player that I saw there, I didn't read Bale. I obviously didn't have my glasses on at the time when I was putting this together for us. So apologies there, FPL Ole. But if you are interested in Dan James, then you've got that as well. Now, Root Cause has sent in their team. They've got Donnarumma in the goalkeepers, you can kind of see on screen. Denia Pau Torres and Alaba. Now, we've covered Alaba. I think we covered Denier as well as a great choice. Donnarumma and Pau Torres are kind of new to our discussions, though. For me personally, I am starting with Donnarumma. I think it kind of removes any worries or causes for problems. So people are kind of talking about 4.5 switching with their goalkeepers, things like that. It just adds too much worry. And yes, he obviously won't get a lot of save points, but I think he'll get clean sheets. And that's the main reason why you've got a goalkeeper in there. Torres is a much more difficult own for me, purely because we don't know who is going to start in that Spanish back line. Could be him, could be Laporte, could be Garcia. It's a difficult one. And the fact that somebody like Sergio Ramos isn't there kind of as an absolute set player means that the only one that I can really speak with kind of assured tones of starting is Alaba. And it's whether you want to pay that little bit extra to have the certainty of Jordi Alba starting, or if you want to look elsewhere, because you and I, Ben, again, had our little bit of reservations over a slightly unsettled Spain side, didn't we?
We did, yes, and not totally convinced. If it was for me at that price point, I think Laporte has to start, given his switching allegiance and how he's played in these warm-up games. So for me, as long as Laporte can stay fit and improves his fitness, which I don't think there's any questions at the moment, then Aymeric Laporte would be the pick over Torres. Regarding Donnarumma, look, if I do maybe throw a team in where I'm not going for a budget keeper, and that'll depend on where my money's spent, then Donnarumma would be the one for me. That Italian backline has looked really tight. I expect him to be very, very highly owned. He's talked out a lot on my timeline and in podcasts, so he is attracting a lot of interest, and quite rightly so.
So with the rest of the team, we've talked about Insigne. We've talked about Depay, so we're going to look at Eriksen and Sabitzer now. And I like Eriksen a lot. I think that FanTeam have really come through for us on this one, with his pricing 7 million for such a high quality player. And the other thing about it is he's going to be producing even higher numbers than he did at Inter Milan. At Inter Milan, he had a great season, but the team was a little bit more defensive than the Danish team will be. But also everything goes through Christian Eriksen. He's going to be the metronome of that team, deciding when and where the balls will be placed. He'll be assisting or he'll be scoring the goals. And with Sabitzer, I think he's a great option at his price point. Honestly, I do. And his price point also means that you can have slightly more premium forwards at the top there, like we can see on screen with the Lukaku, Kane, Ronaldo choices. But yeah, Sabitzer, in terms of some great underlying numbers, there's just a lot to like about that pick in what should be a fairly good Austria team in a decent group for that Austria team as well. I actually came out with maybe a controversial statement, but I thought that they'd actually top their group. I think that they're the best team in Group C. But yeah, what are your thoughts and feelings on Eriksen and Sabitzer, Ben?
I particularly like Christian Eriksen. The Danes, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about them, and maybe they're just flying under the radar a little bit, but they've had some excellent results in recent times. The standout for me was a World Cup qualifier just back at the end of March, where they won 4-0 against Austria. Fantastic result. That followed a 8-0 victory over Moldova. You may question the opposition, but still to go out at any level, really, and bang 8 goals. They also drew with Germany, and I think they got a 2-0 win over Bosnia as well, so they're taking along. And when you talk about team and players who are the talisman, Christian Eriksen is the Danish talisman. Everything goes through him. He's a different player. He is standout head and shoulders. And look, it's 7 million in a team who have a very, very good chance of progressing from that group. In that opening fixture in particular, I know there's going to be a lot of rivalry there, the Scandinavian rivalry, but that's an opportunity there for Eriksen to really sort of lay down a marker and draw a line in the sand for Denmark. So he is he's definitely on my watch list and could make it in. I say it's 7 million. I think he's a steal.
Yeah, I think he is as well. So I think that actually makes a pretty hardy, attractive midfield there. We've covered Lukaku, we've covered Ronaldo. So we got to talk about Mr. Sir Harold of Kane. I think it will please many England fans about who is leading the line there. And to be fair, I think that Harry Kane is in all likelihood probably going to score in each of those opening games. He's got 3 really good games there to really maybe kick down and lay a marker for England. If they can go out of the group winning all their games, conceding as few as possible, if not getting clean sheets in every single one, they can be favourites going further on. They'll get such belief. So I've got nothing against Harry Kane, and kind of talking about our Ronaldo discussions, he's somebody that you can be sure about playing every single game. You can be sure that he'll be integral in every part of play of every single game as well. I don't think he'll have his minutes managed too much as well, Ben, do you?
No, I mean, typically what, any captain of any team, national team or otherwise, those players tend to stay on the pitch. And what we know about Harry Kane, he's competitive. He loves to, he is a bit of a bully boy as well. He will play until the 94th minute. There will be no easing back. He's obviously on spot kicks. And we discussed it on our Premier League podcast when we came back, when he returned from his recent ankle problem. He has that sort of 2 to 3 to 4 game period where he's playing himself back in. He's not quite there in terms of, hitting his XG and his XA. But once he gets over that, he finds his feet again. Typically, he's exceeding that and he's performing well. And that's really, come at a good time for Harry Kane. So, look, 13.5 million, I think he's the most expensive player in the game. If you don't own him, you're taking one hell of a risk, because he could absolutely fly. And like I say, if England are on the metal from the get-go, then teams with Harry Kane in their side and captaining Harry Kane, could be out of reach by the time the second round comes along.
Looking at root causes bench now, I think he's done really well in terms of playing players who will start their matches, will pick up points if somebody is injured in your first 11, but he's not kind of overspent on somebody that's just going to be sitting on your bench for the first game, or somebody who's going to be sitting on the bench for a little while. You want to have these premium players out there playing each week. So Rakedy, again, just placeholder. Mile, we like him a lot, and maybe he should be played ahead of some other players in certain games. Celik, great option, bargain bucket, and has a lot of potential upside in terms of for that Turkey team. And then Zielinski he's going to play, but you could save money there, but it's kind of discussing. They've already got 500k left in their bank that maybe they could go for a 6 million midfielder, but that's neither here nor there, Ben. I mean, do you want to add any more on root causes teams, or do you want to move on to our next one?
No, pretty happy with that bench. Like I say, just to echo your thoughts, Mile for me is a possible starter. Like him a lot, strong, like the Danish team. So maybe that would be a player that I would potentially bring into the starting 11.
So we move on to FPL Teach Mode Andy, who tweeted in. And I think he thought that the R in RMT was roast my team because he said, rip it to shreds. We don't want to do that. We want to be helpful. We want to give positive feedback in terms of the team. There's a lot to talk about with this team, actually, because it's quite differential. And it's one of the only teams that I've seen with a Croatia player in it. So there's a lot to talk about. We'll start with the goalkeeper. I don't hate having Kasper Schmeichel in. It's just a question of, do you think that Denmark are going to keep as many clean sheets against Russia and Belgium I think they'll do it against Finland, but the other two games are quite difficult, especially with the unique way that Russia play. They're quite tough physically on teams, and I think they're a shock to the system. They foul a lot. They're not adverse to getting stuck in, so I'm not too sure about that. The back line, two Italian defenders. I don't think we need to open up much more than that. They're kind of the safe bet Italian defenders. Now, Hernandez as the French left back. You and I discussed that maybe Digne might come in for him in certain games, but also France have a really tough start to the group. We're not too keen on Germany, but at the same extent, we know that the Germans have capabilities. So you have to question whether he'll get an attacking or even a clean sheet output in that game. And in Helik, I think he's all right for the Slovenia game, but going ahead, I'm not too sure that Poland is a good defence. So yeah, what are your thoughts and feelings on those three players that we've kind of commented on there?
I mean, first and foremost, it's quite refreshing to see the team, and because and we don't have ownership percentages on FanTeam at the moment, but it looks to be on paper a very, very differential team. Anti-template, differential dinnery. So it's right up my street. However, I'm not gonna roast it. I think there is money better spent elsewhere. Look, there's a couple of teams in there where I've mentioned it before. I need eyes on really to see how they're going to perform in this competitive environment within the tournament. The European qualification matches was such a long time ago. We've got a very small data set to look from in recent games in the World Cup qualifiers. Those friendlies, you can't glean a lot from them. So maybe particularly in this opening phase, maybe play, and this is coming from me, by the way. So it depends what your goals are, but if you want to go for the big prize and you want to try and cash out with a decent amount, maybe it's worth playing just a little bit safer during this opening phase. And then, if you have one of the underdogs that may shine, you have your wild card at the end of that group phase, then you can maybe look to bring some of those players in. I just think it is maybe a bridge too far and a little bit of an unnecessary risk to pick so many, differentials potentially for this opening phase.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point in terms of maybe over differentials there. The kind of Florenzi, Bonucci are really good, and I think a lot of people have that Italian double or treble up as he has with the midfielder as well. But it's just a little bit step too far, and kind of looking at who Poland have got in their group with Slovakia and Spain, it's a difficult one. On top of it, Sweden as well. They won't score a lot, but they could cause problems. Poland's defence has been fairly solid in qualification, but as stated, that was a long while ago. So yeah, I'm not too sure. Insigne and Eriksen we've talked about. Zielinski as well. My question would be, if you've got Modric, who's a little bit more expensive than Zielinski, surely he should be starting on the pitch in that game. Zielinski is more kind of going to be a bench warmer that you have. If you're dead certain that Modric is not going to play or is not going to do good, you should be starting your kind of most expensive players. Even Zinchenko, if you believe that he's worth that 6 million over Zielinski's 5 million, you should be starting them as well. And arguably Zinchenko plays the Netherlands, who we don't think, me and Ben don't think, will keep many clean sheets. So that could be a good game, a differential game. So yeah, what do you think about Zielinski? Should they be playing Modric or Zinchenko instead of them?
I like Zinchenko a little bit higher up the pitch. I mean, he plays all over for the Ukraine, and I'm impressed. I don't think again, I mentioned it before, how teams are maybe just flying under the radar. I think Ukraine could be one of those teams as well. Maybe not just getting the credit or the recognition. They're going to be difficult to beat, and when it doesn't matter who the player is, when they're playing up that, higher up the pitch, it just gives that little bit of hope. It gives you that nice little warm, fuzzy feeling. Like Cancelo at Man City, we know he's a defender, but there's a chance that Pep can play him in midfield, or he can even play in a further advanced role. And, the thought of getting attacking returns from that, then, I like it. So for me, it would be Zinchenko coming into that midfield.
Yeah, the interesting thing is obviously Ukraine almost shocked the world a little bit as well, that they finished ahead of Portugal in that qualification group. They topped it. They played well. It just seems for me it's a year too late for the Ukrainian side. They've kind of fallen by the wayside in that time. But, Zinchenko, he is classed as a mid, but he's going to be involved in the attacks there of that Ukrainian side, and he's quite an exciting prospect. But just for me, the question is probably Zinchenko, Modric first, then Zinchenko, then Zielinski would be my order of preference of playing those players, just because of their price point as well. I wouldn't let price dictate too much, but at the end of the day, you're paying premium for a reason. Otherwise, don't have Zinchenko or don't have Modric. Have cheaper players and bump up the value of others.
There's a possibility there. And if you want to get rid of Zielinski and go with Modric and Zinchenko and go with a 3-4-3, like I say, FanTeam award, the more offensive players in those teams. So, drop a defender, go with the three, which would look pretty solid in the two Italians and the Frenchman, and go, with that block four.
That's not a bad shout at all. Moving on to the forward line, Griezmann and Mbappe complete a double up of French assets, and then we like Lewandowski, so we don't need to talk about him. We've already mentioned that he's a great kind of asset. I think he can cause a lot of problems in that group. But yeah, I mean, we had a debate the other day in terms of which one to choose from Griezmann and Mbappe. Well, you can ask that question, just go yes. Just have them both. Then that removes any FOMO of missing out on any sort of their returns there. I mean, it's a bold strategy. I kind of respect the kahunas on it. What's your thoughts and feelings, Ben?
It's bold. Look, eggs in basket springs to mind. It's one of those, it's boom or bust. It's a difficult group, so that's the concern. And they could be quite tight, cagey affairs. First off, they may be looking at, those big games. Let's keep it tight. Let's keep it, maybe nick a point, and then we'll just target Hungary and we go for the goal difference option. Mbappe, 13 million, second highest price striker in the FanTeam game. Doesn't have a great international record. I think was 16 and 42. But his domestic form this season for PSG, which is 46 in 47 games, if I recall correctly, is outstanding. So, who's to say that this isn't his moment to shine? That said, I went with Griezmann. We said 14 goal involvements in 14 tournament games over the last two that he's been involved in. His price point gives you a little bit more wiggle room. And for that reason, like I say, I'd be happy to take Griezmann and monitor Mbappe closely. And if I feel as if, like I say, I'm not bothered about missing Mbappe in that opening game against Germany. Like I say, it's the first one. It's a tough game. But if I see something that I like, either from France or Mbappe, then look, you could easily look at that second game or targeting, for the big one where you would expect France to go nap against Hungary.
Yeah, I do agree with you, actually. I like the boldness, but I would say that it's not a tactic that I agree with. I've been very cagey, and people can go back to our video on Group F, the group of death. Oh, it's so scary. I'm like cagey on having too many assets from there, and that's why I said that I'd probably, if I was going to, I'd have Ronaldo and then move out, because it's just, there's too much at risk. The good thing is, obviously, I think every team in that group, barring Hungary, unfortunately, no insult to them, but France, Germany and Portugal are realistically going to have to go and give it their all in every single game. But the flip side is every single game, apart from the Hungary one, they're playing top quality opponents. And so it's not that good of a group to be invested in. I think Griezmann or Mbappe instead of Griezmann and Mbappe is probably the wisest spread of risk with that. And in terms of the bench, we've already talked about two of the options. Çakır, we think, is just great as a kind of bench goalkeeper for Turkey. And Karavayev, I hope that I pronounced that correctly. This is one of the things about Euros, is it just it highlights poor pronunciation. I think that this person is obviously kind of believing in the Ukrainian style, and a 4.5 defender. You can't really criticise it too much because it's just a cheap defender that maybe they'll bring on, maybe they won't. They might rotate it with the Polish one. So it's kind of how they want to play if they believe in that defence. But what I would say is, you and I, Ben, we like the Denmark defence a little bit more, and you can get Mila who has more attacking thrust for the same amount of money. I don't know if you've anything to add on that.
No, echo those thoughts completely. I think, Denmark are a safe option. I think Ukraine could do okay. You know, the group doesn't really present with many problems. Obviously, nobody's talking about North Macedonia here. And I'll still go back to that result against Germany where they won 2-1 back in March. So, look, echo those. I think Mele would be a better option in there.
So we move on to the final team from ACES. John Origi, Donnarumma between the sticks, Spinazzola, two players that we talked about. We've kind of covered Netherlands with the discussion about the goalkeeper. Don't trust in them too much. So let's start off with John Stones, as I like to call him. I like to imagine Pep Guardiola calls him Hon Stones. This is one of the worst running jokes that we have, Ben, but Hon Stones right there. My belief is in this group, England are very good at set piece work. John Stones will probably be starting. You've kind of said that Maguire, not 100% sure if he'll be starting each game. So he's going to be one of the targets on set piece work. It's not hard, and England have done well to keep clean sheets recently. 11 out of their last 15 games. It's not, above the imagination to think that they could keep 1, 2 or 3 clean sheets in these tough games. Do you believe in John Stones? Do you believe in the 3 lines defence?
In the group stages, yes. There's 3 very, very winnable games and potentially 3 clean sheets there. I don't really see, other than Croatia, maybe we shouldn't be caused too many problems. John Stones, look, that England backline are premium for a reason. The only concern that I have, and it wouldn't be a real issue, is, maybe going into that knockout phase. But you've got your wild card, and, you could tinker and change it accordingly, because England, it looks likely that they're going to get one of the big boys in the next round. So, that back line is at risk of conceding, definitely. But look, I quite like Stones at price point at 6. The rest of them, I'm just having a quick look there. He's the cheapest of those who we expect to start. So why not? We've seen, his form for Manchester City has been much better this season. He's popped up with some really important goals. So if he could maybe get an attack and return to go with those, defensive shutouts, then happy days.
So continuing up the pitch, we've covered Insigne, Depay. The 2 new ones that we need to talk about is one that we've been very warm on, and it's Jorginho Wijnaldum. I think he's a great own, especially for his price point as well in FanTeam. and Ferran Torres, as stated on the kind of Olmo discussions there. I think Ferran Torres is my favourite pick in terms of any Spanish player. I think he's going to be the centre point of that attack. He'll be getting loads of really high quality chances, and he's a really, really clinical finisher, whereas Olmo is probably the person almost like loading the gun, and Ferran Torres is taking the shots, putting it into the back of the net. Yeah, and Wijnaldum, Ben, he was one of almost your differential dinnery picks, wasn't he?
He is, and I've sort of cooled a little bit, because my initial thoughts were looking at that European qualification data, thinking the Wijnaldum at the Liverpool and that predominantly holding role in that sitting was far different from the Wijnaldum that we've seen for the Netherlands, who had lots of goal involvements, lots of attacking prowess. But, with the introduction of the new manager, and I think there's a slight sort of tactical switch, we've seen Wijnaldum drop just a little bit deeper and have a slightly different role than what he had under Koeman. And that's just sort of tempered my enthusiasm with regards to Wijnaldum. I mean, purely on the numbers and the stats, it looks great. I think he's at 7 million, so he's at a great price point. But I'm just thinking, just recent developments and the changes in that Netherlands team and everything else. I'm liking other players from other teams, a little bit more. I would prefer, for me, maybe like a Souček and then an upgrade to like a Bernardo or something elsewhere, as opposed to go with Gini. So yeah, I started, these little series of podcasts with Wijnaldum as being in that draft. But he's fell out with the manager. I'm losing that little bit of love for Gini. My apologies.
So you're not going to rub the genie's lamp this time around and make 3 wishes for the group stage. It's going to have to be on somebody else. What about Ferran Torres, though? I mean, we've been a little bit reticent in terms of committing to the defence of Spain, but Torres is an attacker. I think he's got so much potential ability, but you again were a little bit cool on Spain in terms of the whole team, a bit much more than me.
Yeah, I was. Ferran Torres, what a huge prospect. I've seen firsthand what he can do up here on Tyneside. Got himself an unbelievable hat-trick, took his goals so well. Unfortunate that he wasn't able to follow up those performances with City and finish the season really strongly. I think he was made way when Cancelo got sent off. He was hooked after 15, and then he was sub the next game, and we've seen obviously Aguero back in the team, and and we know, history will tell us what's happened from that point. He's a young lad. The only slight concern that I have is the weight of expectation on him to go out and to deliver, because he is such an amazing, great talent. And maybe in a Spanish team that isn't as good as it has been in recent times. At Manchester City, it's almost, he can come on and he's in a team with some superstars, and he's not really the shining light. He is the prospect. That level of expectation isn't there. For the national team coming into this tournament, and he may respond, I don't know. I cannot, hand on heart, I cannot say that I know Ferran Torres that well, but there's a lot of pressure on him, and as for the Spanish team, and for me, again, it's just a little bit of a risky punt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more warmer, because I just believe that the service to him is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's a world-class midfield there with Spain, and I feel he's almost out of position. He's going to be so attacking that he's going to have quite a few opportunities. And the group that he's in, like I said, I think that Spain will concede goals, but I think all the teams that are in that group with them are also likely to let some in. Let's focus on the forward line, though. Well, I think we've covered a lot of this forward line, actually. Lukaku, Griezmann, Ronaldo. You kind of expressed your thoughts and feelings on that. So maybe the bench is where we need to give our final judgments. Dubravka, Millet, McTominay, and Barisic. So we've kind of talked about Millet. So there's 3 players there. Dubravka, I think he's a good starter, a good goalkeeper. Could get some save points in that group. And probably a little bit better than the Finnish goalkeeper, who's going to be the 4 million one. I mean, you're quite warm. Obviously, you've got the Newcastle bias towards him, but that doesn't really come into thinking when we're talking about the Euros and internationals.
No, not really. But I know he's a keeper of immense quality. Great shot stopper. And yeah, he's my backup on the bench. Like I say, I wouldn't expect many clean sheets, but certainly save points is a distinct possibility. And at 4 million, again, it's an absolute no-brainer.
And looking at the other kind of people on the bench, I think they're almost just warmers. They're people that will play, but not necessarily that they will play in the team, because they don't want them. Millet, great choice. McTominay, an interesting one. I think he could play a big part for Scotland, but I'm not sure there'll be too many returns. So what I like is basically all the money has gone into the main team, and that's kind of what you want with this. Your bench is almost there to give you coverage in case any of your starting 11 doesn't play, but really you don't want too much money kind of saved up in there. So in terms of it, that is the last Rate My Team. And I guess, Ben, we have to announce who the competition winners are for this video. We're doing it for the first time in video, aren't we?
We are, but I tell you what, I just wanted to make a quick point with regards to McTominay, priced at 4.5. What I would do is I would switch him straight out, John McGinn. If you're going to go Scotland and you're going to go midfield, 4.5. He's a different beast to the midfielder that plays at Aston Villa. He's got some great returns for the national team. So, he's really sort of stands up and be counted. So for me, it would be John McGinn.
Yeah, well, he was top goal scorer in qualification for the Scots. 7 goals. No
same
brainer,
price
really.
Point. So,
no, I totally agree with you, Ben. So, but the exciting bit that I'm sure a lot of people will be looking forward to is competition time. And we didn't actually tell people that we'd be doing this in the video, so it's almost like a little bit of a surprise, isn't it?
It is. And obviously we discussed all of the entries, and then we hand picked the ones that we thought were best for the purposes of this video and the strongest lineups. And we've had some interesting discussions. I think even my thoughts listening to what you've brought to the table and your analysis has almost changed my way of thinking with regards to not only some of these teams, but also mine as well. So, we talk about this is not just for everybody else that's watching, but we take a lot of information and insight for this ourselves. And, I've been making notes. I've already scribbled out a couple of names on my draft. I've took elements of what you've said, took elements of these teams, and I'm hopefully putting together a pretty strong squad myself. So yeah, look, I've really enjoyed popping me cherry, as it were, in my first ever either watching or taking part in Rate My Team.
Well, and I guess going forward, there will be a wild card at the extra stage going in, so maybe there might be a chance if enough people kind of like and comment on this video, we might do a second one for just before we get into the knockout rounds to help you once again. Do let us know, comment below if you'd like that and get involved. But for now, do you want to make the revelation? Who is our winner this week?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to add, congratulations first and foremost. It wasn't a team that I initially picked out as being the strongest one that had been submitted. But as we've went through the podcast, as we've discussed teams in more depth, and you've offered your own insight analysis, the team's actually grown on me a little bit. I think there's one or two sort of minor tweaks that you can include in there. But inherently, it's the forward line, the offensive aspect of this team that's really sold it for me. I've actually scribbled it down on paper, and you might get it up. So, have we got a drum roll, Jason? Have we got any drums in the house? Oh, hold on.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, it's
Root.
My number one team. It's Root Cause.
So Root, I hope you like that. This is in the video and it will be going out on social media as well. And for everybody else that joined in the Rate My Team video, we liked all your teams as well, but this one just pipped it a little bit more. We hope that you found the information really useful for this, and going forwards, we might do another one during the knockout phases. You know, if you give enough love to this video, make sure to like, comment below, get those subscriptions in, and that could be another fun thing, because I've really enjoyed this. I'm sure you have, Ben, and I just wish everybody the best of luck going forward and that you found our information useful. But I'm going to hand it over to Big Ben himself to see us out.
Yeah, fantastic, Jason. I have really enjoyed it. Like I say, popped my cherry, as it were. Never even seen a Rate My Team before. I'm not certainly never taken part in one. So it's a brand new experience for me, and look forward to doing another one. Like I say, if the community and those who are watching want us to do it, bang your thoughts in the comments section. And like I say, when we can maybe revisit this at the end of the group phase, when we all have a wild card. So guys, we've done the group stage. We're now, on the countdown to the Euro 2020 blank tournament kickoff. Keep watching and we'll keep producing the content, and we'll see you all again very soon.